Hey, what up, beautiful people? This is me, the Infinity Midwife. I hope you guys are doing well, taking care of your minds, your hearts, and your whole being. Gucci God, what's up? So, yes, I'm in this beautiful village. Alors, va manger à l'intérieur, c'est tout. So we out here. I finished work early, you know what's up? And I needed to make this message because I feel like this message is really important for all of us who are going through these times of change, these times of evolutions, these times of attunement, of refinement. So that's the message for you guys. I feel like I needed to come out first to say, damn, like, this journey that we're on is not easy. A lot of times we feel called to step out of our comfort zone, do things that we usually wouldn't normally do. And I feel like we are all together on our journey. So we kind of have this sense of community together. But at the same time, I feel like for many of us, it can feel lonely because we are called to do things that in this mundane world, it's not things that are popular. It's not things that are mainstream. It's not things that are common. Especially now that we're dealing more with the feminine energies, we're reconciling with the aspect of ourselves that is more feminine, that is more of the unseen, that is less about action, that is more about introspection, that is more about observation and listening and being guided from this unseen source. It takes a lot. It takes a lot for many of us to just pull away from what we were used to for so long. For so long we were used to do things a certain way, acquire material things a certain way, look at success a certain way, look at wealth, look at financial gain a certain way, look at money a certain way. And we've always been pushed to go after these wealthy things, or these things that were of society. But now we're being called into leaving that behind and trusting our inner guidance, our inner feelings, our inner compass to be guided to birth a new world that is reflective of our internal universe, that is reflective of our inner worlds. And for so long, because of how we were living in this era of bondage, we were going for normalcy or normality, we were going for unity, we were going for separation through illusions, through different beliefs, through different systems of beliefs, culture, traditions, religions. We were also very much so put in certain boxes on how expression of how the feminine expresses herself, of how the masculine expresses himself, of how gender roles are about. So we've been living in this era of having our lives dictated for us for quite some time. And now that we're moving away from that, we are being asked, we are being challenged to look at what we have, internally. What are the beliefs about ourselves, what we think we've came here to do that is not of society, that is not of societal norms. To listen to that intuition that is guiding us to do things out of the norm that we wouldn't really do, but we know it's in here. We know, and if we know it, we then should trust it, we then should believe in it, and then we should then be guided by it. And that is very challenging for a lot of us, especially those that had a lot of attachment to this 3D holographic reality. Many of us that hold so many attachments in this dimension will find it hard to just detach from all these things and turn inwardly. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Ok chérie, c'est bien, t'as fait passer le message? Oui?
Oui.
Ok, parfait, merci.
Merci.
They just need to be heard. Sometimes they just need to be heard. So, all this to say, okay, we are being guided to come back into this more of a truth that may not resonate to your next door neighbor, that may not resonate to your spouse, that may not resonate to your friend, to your circle of friends, but it's a truth that is growing within you. And for so long, we've been taught to ignore that voice, to ignore that intuition, to ignore that guidance, and go for the majority, go for what, society expects of us. À l'intérieur, ils sont en train de regarder leur émission.
C'est quoi?
Mais je sais pas, va voir. Va leur demander. And for so long, we've been told that, this is the way that you should conduct yourself, or, this is how the external world influences you. But we are coming to the conclusion that it's the opposite that is actually true. It's your internal world, it's your internal belief about yourself that will create that external reality for you. And through different types of arts, Chérie, maman est occupée. Je suis occupée maintenant. So through different ways of experiencing, with the divine, with the unseen, with the feminine aspects of ourselves, many chose to do it through the science of the occult, through different divination or different art forms of divination, whether it's through tarot card reading, whether it's through expression of beauty, expression of sensuality, sexuality, whether it's through forbidden knowledge. So there was a lot of things that was expressive of the feminine, but now we are all being asked as individuals to tap into our own well of what that feminine expression feels like and is like and can become for us on an individual level, and by thus becoming a reality for the collective that choose to dive in that well. So for that being said, a lot of the reasons why I feel like a lot of knowledge, a lot of science were kept secretive is because, again, people, like, we were not in this point of our evolution where, we could share about those things. We could share about those revelations, those secrets, the way miracles operate, the way manifestation really operates. So that's why for a long, long time, it was agreed upon many, many groups to keep those sciences forbidden, or to keep those sciences really on a low key, because, again, we were coming from an era of conformity of, everybody does the same, thinks the same, acts the same, tries to thrive for the same. And because we're coming out of there, a lot of hidden knowledge is coming back to the surface. A lot of hidden things, a lot of hidden knowledge, hidden notions of being, hidden ways of manifesting, hidden ways of creating realities and worlds is now coming to the surface. And so, yes, on the collective level, it's going to influence a lot of us, because a lot of people are coming into the knowing of secrets, family secrets of how the feminine played, or how the toxic feminine played out, or how the toxic masculine energy played out in families dynamics. So that's why we're hearing a lot of secrets about, how There were energy harvesting, children being trafficked into prostitution, into being slaves or sexual slaves, or sexually exploited. So we're coming into the knowing that there was a lot of attachments, there was a lot of family that were bonded into different practices and traditions that twisted the feminine expression, or the feminine energy expressed. So through a lot of different dark sciences, we're going to hear about the coming out of those secrets. On a collective level, we're going to hear about corruption. Chérie, regarde-moi.
Trop peu d'abeilles.
Ok, est-ce que tu peux aller jouer? Va jouer, mon amour. Va jouer. So we're going to hear a lot about, on a collective level, governments, how the governments were actually ruling over nations. We're going to hear about a lot of how things were really funded. We're going to come to the deep roots of how sexual exploitation was running big businesses, how human trafficking was running big businesses, big corporations, governments. Like, we're coming into the knowledge of this. Why? Because again, we are transitioning out of the era of bondage, where we kept the feminine in a box, in this demonized box, and we've extrapolated the masculine to the point of being so toxic, right? So now we are coming out of that era. The air is being cleaned. Secrets are coming to the surface on an individual level, on a spiritual level, on all levels, and we're slowly stepping away of that dynamic to come into a healthier individual dynamic. Now it's not done. Like, it's just the beginning. Like, we have more years of this to happen, but it is happening. It is now. Okay, now is the time to look at parts of ourselves, especially on an individual level. Like, now is the time to look at parts of ourselves that were kept in the attic, parts of skeletons that we've kept in our closets for so long. Now this is the time to really look at them and to be properly equipped to deal with them. Like, this is it. And the pandemic, let me just say this, I think for many of us, the pandemic was some form of breakthrough, where it was or an opportunity to detach easily of worldly attachments. Like, the pandemic was the best time, starting since 2019 all the way till now. The pandemic was the greatest opportunity everybody had to fully detach and do a lot of introspection. And during that time of introspection, come to the conclusion, or come to a closing of a chapter of how things used to work but isn't working anymore. That was that was one of the greatest opportunities we had. Some generations dealt with it differently, but us, all the people who are surviving this right now, this is our time. This is our time to come into individual realization. Now, I was guided to speak on it for some reason. I was guided to speak on why, how are the elements even, or how can we dive a little bit more into the elements, and into implementing elements into our daily practices, so that we can express more of who we are at our core level. Okay, for some people it's really easy to do because they've they were seen as ostracized, or maybe they were marginalized, or maybe something in their life happened to where they always had that knowledge that they were different, that they were out of this world. And then some people, through some events, you know, were forced into opening up their eyes about who they really are. Okay. And so when you start understanding who you really are, you start understanding your power. You're gonna start utilizing more of that power on an elemental level, meaning that, you know, everything is alive. Nothing is separate from God. And when you get down to that notion, when you get down to that experience, you will want to tap into the elementals. And when I say tap into the elementals, some people can refer to magic, and that's okay if that's how you reference your way to the elementals. But basically, the elementals is what? Is the elements, right? Is nature. And when you tap into nature, and when you start implementing nature in how your powers are being expressed, or how you use nature to express your power, you can then start creating magic, literally. And what are the four elements that we know, right? There's water, earth, air, fire. Okay, for those who are new to this, I strongly recommend you watching Aang, The Last Airbender, because it gives you a feels of what it is, what are the characteristics of the elements, the four nations. And when you talk about, when you see how, all nations have their own specialities, how their own nation, the four nations have their own expertise based on the elements, like, that's taking it a step further. And then it's about implementing it, experiencing with it in your own personal life, individual life. And then a lot of different other animes will come with their own notion of individual expressed power. Okay, and you have the famous Naruto, you have Dragon Ball Z, you have very different ones. The ones now that I'm introducing to my boys is Hunter x Hunter, that I feel is a lot more representative of what we're going through right now. So all this to say, I want to say shout out to the peace dealer who introduced me to a lot. Like, his channel is lit, and I learned a lot on his channel, not only as it regards to astrology, but just overall knowledge of self. Like, if you tune in, you'll listen to his live streams. They're really, really interesting, and the chat is always lit. So yes, so when you start tuning in with the elements, you start recognizing that in a lot of religions there were hidden knowledge, that it was not giving to everyone. Like, you needed to conduct yourself in a certain way, or have a certain structure in order to be approached by a certain hierarchy that would come and say, you are special. You can push the faith a little further, if you join in the Sunday Bible studies, or even more so, that would follow into certain groups that are not really fully broadcasted to the mass. But if you can start reading in between the lines of certain Bible verses, some people make magic out of it, light or dark. Same applying to Islam, same applying to Judaism with the Kabbalah. So there are levels to this, right? And we are coming to a knowledge that, more and more people are being are slowly getting into the deeper meaning of what that religion was, or what that religion is, you know, its origin, where it comes from, really, you know, who were really the originators of these faiths, and you know, how those faiths were corrupted by a whole nation of illusionists. So when you get down to the very core of these things, you can then start, you know, looking at the Bible or the Quran or the or the damn, what's the book, or the Torah differently. You know, you can start looking at those books and read it, but with more intent and with more wisdom to it, right? Because it's not, all these books are not literal. You know, when you start reading these books, you know, there's a literal sense to it that is applicable in how you live your life. But then there is a more symbolic meaning, or spiritual meaning, when you, or even metaphysical meaning, when you really start to implement, or when you really start being how can I say this? When you really start having more wisdom, right? When you even actually go through certain experiences of life, you can then come into a different interpretation of certain verses, certain passages of all of these books. And there are many, many more books, those from ancient Kemet, those that comes from the different Vedas, those that are from ancient China, ancient Asia, and even those that we're not even familiar with, those that we haven't not even come into knowledge of.